In a quiet, unassuming moment, Kim Jae-hyun's world is reduced to the audible crunch of a fried snack, his gaze lost in the shadows cast by his dark, shaggy hair. The crinkle of a chip bag was the only sound in the room as Kim Jae-hyun calmly reflected on a single, overwhelming truth: after everything, he was still alive. Yet, his moment of calm reflection was cut short by a heavy sigh, his expression turning pensive as a crucial caveat came to mind. The quiet squalor of a dimly lit room, a young man named Kim Jae-hyun sat surrounded by trash, the silence broken only by his crushing realization that he was all alone. Staring into the quiet emptiness of his home, Kim Jae-hyun was struck by the stark realization that he was the sole occupant of the sprawling 1,000 square foot space. Beneath an overcast sky, the ruins of a collapsed building lay starkly before the one apartment that still stood, a structure purchased through his father's momentous decision to use all their family's savings and take on a staggering amount of debt. Standing before a towering apartment complex amidst a symbolic rain of money, Kim Jae-hyun revealed the property's true value, a significant tax benefit granted after a 2-year residency. Staring at his phone, Kim Jae-hyun lamented how his solitary life had become a trap when the apocalypse suddenly hit. His growing panic was then confirmed as the screen coldly announced that the network was unavailable, leaving him utterly alone. Kim Jae-hyun's otherwise normal day was abruptly interrupted by a piercing shriek from just off-panel, causing him to flinch in startled surprise while still clutching his smartphone. A sudden sound whipped past Kim Jae-hyun, shattering the quiet moment and leaving him frozen in wide-eyed, uncomprehending shock. The quiet morning on Kim Jae-hyun's balcony was abruptly shattered by a screeching whoosh as a massive, dark-winged creature shot past, leaving him to wonder what in the world it could have been. A deafening shriek and the explosive crash of a metal grate announced the arrival of a terrifying multi-mouthed beast, its glowing eye fixing on Kim Jae-hyun as he looked up in pure alarm. A blur of motion and a cry of sudden shock, Kim Jae-hyun was violently thrown, his body contorting as he tumbled helplessly through the air. Above the sprawling city, the air was violently torn by a piercing screech as a shadowy, dragon-like creature plunged from the heavens, its glowing yellow eyes a beacon of impending chaos. A wave of unseen power suddenly washed over Kim Jae-hyun, forcing a desperate cry from his lips as he clutched his head in agony. With a sickening thud, a massive hand slammed down on Kim Jae-hyun's head, forcing a choked grunt of agony from his lips. Amidst a chaotic shriek and a thudding impact, a protective blue energy barrier suddenly materialized, its hexagonal grid flashing an urgent alert that an unauthorized entity was attempting to breach the perimeter. In the quiet solitude of his sanctuary, a notification materialized with a soft whish, detailing a new passive skill perfectly suited for the ultimate shut-in, the declaration of home base. Hunched over the soft glow of a holographic interface, Kim Jae-hyun finally let out a long breath, a wave of profound relief washing over him as the critical system message appeared. Spurred by his success, he rose to his feet, his relief hardening into concentration as he willed the glowing blue rectangle to lift into the air, affirming that it was responding correctly. In a dimly lit void, Kim Jae-hyun stood enveloped by a soft blue glow, grimly acknowledging that this power was the only reason he had survived. In the somber silence of a desolate city, Kim Jae-hyun watched from his window, marking the third day since the world had ended. A single bead of sweat traced Kim Jae-hyun's temple as his mind settled on a troubling memory, the strange ability that had always kept him safe. Alone in the quiet darkness of a sparse room, Kim Jae-hyun sat hunched on the floor, his world reduced to the cold, blue glow of the holographic system floating before him. From the digital void, a glowing blue interface materialized, its text forming an unyielding cage as it declared that the ultimate shut-in was forbidden from ever leaving the house. In the stark silence of his room, an exhausted Kim Jae-hyun stared at the glowing blue interface beside him, a bitter laugh escaping his lips as he dismissed its mention of an ultimate power as a cruel joke. It began with a cryptic system message, its cold blue light illuminating Kim Jae-hyun's pained face as he protested the sudden restriction that declared the ultimate forbidden. As tension mounted, a cunning smirk played on Kim Jae-hyun's lips, his calm facade betrayed only by a single bead of sweat as he cast a furtive glance to the side. Surrounded by a bleak assortment of instant meals on his apartment floor, Kim Jae-hyun finally articulated his deepest worry: the fundamental problem was food. His anxiety sharpened into a specific fear as he bit his finger, realizing that even his stockpile of instant noodles was about to run out. The unexpected chime of a notification cut through Kim Jae-hyun's mounting anxiety, his startled expression questioning the sound as a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. With the Kelikan finally defeated, 2 blue system messages swished into view, announcing a significant gain in experience and new skill levels from the successful hunt. A glowing blue system window suddenly flared to life before a wide-eyed Kim Jae-hyun, notifying him that he had gained both experience and a new skill. A sudden footstep from below drew the startled gaze of Kim Jae-hyun, who leaned over the railing, his breath catching in the tense silence. Deep within the dungeon, the air split with the shrieks of a savage feeding frenzy as a horde of green-skinned creatures armed with daggers fell upon a massive blue beast, tearing it apart even as it desperately fought back. Standing amidst the debris that was once his home, a bewildered Kim Jae-hyun wiped the sweat from his face, groaning as he questioned how the Pelican that crashed and died could have possibly been counted as his own kill. In a rapid succession of chimes, glowing blue notifications materialized in the air, announcing the acquisition of a new skill and the automatic collection of nearby loot. The quiet was shattered by a piercing scream from somewhere unseen, jolting a young man named Kim Jae-hyun from his thoughts as he looked around in startled confusion. Monstrous figures suddenly shrieked in agony, their yellow eyes wide with terror, leaving Kim Jae-hyun to wonder what could possibly be afflicting them. A sudden eruption of dark, swirling energy overwhelmed three goblin-like creatures, their agonized shrieks filling the air as they were thrown into chaos. A triumphant chime cut through the silence as a glowing blue system window materialized, confirming the collection of loot and the deposit of a staggering 2 million won into his wallet. Staring out from the railing, Kim Jae-hyun was struck by a sudden, jarring confusion, unable to grasp the meaning of what he was hearing. It began with a sudden, brilliant flash that tore through the darkness, causing Kim Jae-hyun to look up with a startled cry. First sign of trouble was a sharp turn of Kim Jae-hyun's head, his eyes widening in sudden, stark alarm. Bathed in an empowering light that suddenly filled his kitchen, Kim Jae-hyun looked up as a system notification confirmed the return of his power, declaring his home an impenetrable fortress against any unauthorized entry. Following this declaration, two more glowing panels materialized before him, detailing a passive skill to maintain his lifestyle and a digital wallet holding an astonishing 2 million won. A single bead of sweat slid past Kim Jae-hyun's wide, disbelieving eye as an overwhelming question consumed him: could this truly be happening? Reading the unbelievable prompt to restore the house's functions, his initial shock gave way to an ecstatic, sweat-beaded grin. The sharp clack of his steps echoing through the space, Kim Jae-hyun burst forward, a blur of focused desperation and speed. That blur of speed came to a sudden stop with a soft whish as he peeked from his hiding spot, his face a mask of unsettling, wide-eyed eagerness. It began with a simple, everyday act, a hand twisting a faucet handle, the sound of splashing water echoing in the quiet space. In a moment of focused preparation, Kim Jae-hyun's finger descended upon a glowing button, bringing the induction cooktop whirring to life. The moment hung heavy with unspoken tension, broken only when Kim Jae-hyun's shadowed face cracked into a deeply unsettling grin as he stammered out a hesitant affirmation. As golden motes of light filled the air around him, Kim Jae-hyun collapsed to his knees, overcome with tears as he triumphantly declared that everything was finally back to the way it was before the world had fallen apart. Spurred by a sudden, hopeful realization, he scrambled for his phone, declaring that it too might finally be working. A heavy, jarring beat echoed the sudden crisis in Kim Jae-hyun's hand, where his smartphone screen starkly declared the network was unavailable, cutting him off completely. Gripping his hair in a fit of frustration, Kim Jae-hyun let out a heavy sigh, muttering to himself that the device in his other hand still refused to work. Quiet moment shattered for Kim Jae-hyun, who could only stare in wide-eyed disbelief, his hand clutching his hair as a sudden, distressing realization washed over him. In the quiet disarray of his apartment, Kim Jae-hyun knelt, his attention suddenly captivated by the impossible glow of a USB drive nestled amongst the trash. The day began like any other for Kim Jae-hyun, who sat completely absorbed in the glow of his multi-monitor setup, the quiet clicks of his mouse echoing through the room as he browsed an endless gallery of cat photos. The story begins with the soft click of a camera shutter, freezing a tender moment in time as a dark-haired woman lovingly cradled her crying newborn in front of their home. A cherished memory surfaces with a faint click, revealing a sunlit day where a small boy in a yellow hat looks up with pure joy, his hand held tightly in a loving grasp. Under a brilliant, sunny sky, the click of a camera preserved a fleeting moment of pure joy for young Kim Jae-hyun and his smiling parents. Surrounded by family, Kim Jae-hyun watched the candles flicker atop his birthday cake, the air filled with the quiet warmth of a cherished celebration. In the quiet of his studio, bathed in the cool glow of a monitor, Kim Jae-hyun sat hunched over his desk, his silence as heavy as the unspoken thoughts racing through his mind. In a moment of heavy stillness, Kim Jae-hyun's face remained obscured by his hair as he let out a long, weary sigh. Staring forward with a grim resolve that made his eyes glow an intense blue, Kim Jae-hyun cemented his singular purpose: he had to bring his family back here. With a look of unyielding resolve, Kim Jae-hyun moved forward, his steady steps echoing his silent declaration to press on, no matter what. Sudden realization broke through Kim Jae-hyun's composure, his gaze shifting to the side as he grappled with the unexpected information. As a new day dawned, an unexpected power awakened before him, materializing in the sky as a holographic interface for the ultimate shut-in system and its newly unlocked Level 1 shop. Disoriented and suddenly surrounded by unfamiliar aisles, Kim Jae-hyun stared wide-eyed, questioning aloud if he had somehow been transported into a shop. Digital Storefront 4, the ultimate shut-in shop, materialized in a glow of blue light, displaying a surprising balance of over 2 million won and offering the chance to register an item for the very first time. With a sudden, electronic whir, a glowing blue system window materialized out of thin air, granting the one known as the ultimate shut-in a new level 1 shop ability to purchase registered items. In a quiet moment of reflection, the unexpected idea of a shop surfaced, prompting a weary Kim Jae-hyun to rest his chin on his hand and ponder its meaning. Curiosity overriding his weariness, he reached out and tapped the shimmering blue shopping cart icon that had just materialized before him. A flash of blue light, a system window materialized, displaying a maxed-out wallet brimming with over 2 million won and prompting its user to register an item for the very first time. The air before a pensive Kim Jae-hyun shimmered and coalesced into a glowing system prompt, inquiring if he wished to register an item for the first time. A quiet morning found Kim Jae-hyun in his kitchen, his expression pensive as he pulled open the refrigerator door with a soft rattle. His quiet moment was shattered by a sudden beep as a glowing blue interface materialized before him, its text declaring a stark new reality: the ultimate shut-in was forbidden from ever leaving the house. Standing on his balcony, Kim Jae-hyun's brief hope shattered against the shimmering hexagonal barrier as he sighed, realizing that even his newly leveled-up skill had failed to break his confinement. In a moment of intense clarity, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze sharpened with the determined realization that he had just learned something new. With a painful groan and a resounding wham, a mysterious bird-like creature was violently struck from the sky, crashing motionlessly onto a cold city rooftop. As the triumphant words, "LV up," materialized before him, a confident smirk grew on Kim Jae-hyun's face with the sudden, thrilling realization that killing monsters was the key to gaining new skills and leveling his power. Gazing out at the sprawling city from his balcony, Kim Jae-hyun contemplated the glowing interface and a perplexing dilemma. He could only leave the house once his level was high enough, yet he was forbidden from venturing out to kill the monsters required to do so. In a sleek high-rise apartment, a resident's sarcastic thought that it wasn't as if monsters would smash against their window was violently answered by the piercing shriek of two such creatures beginning their assault. Just as a horrifying realization dawned, a skeletal bird-like monstrosity erupted from the city's ruins, its piercing shriek and the cackles of its smaller minions shattering the desolate silence. As a tense silence fell, Kim Jae-hyun gripped the surface before him, his worried expression hardening with the dawning, dangerous realization that he might be able to kill those goblins. Inside the quiet hum of the car, Kim Jae-hyun reached into a side compartment, his hand closing around a water bottle with a deft flick of his wrist. Moments later, standing outside the car, he flung the bottle with tremendous force, the object slicing through the air with a sharp whish. The forceful shove, Kim Jae-hyun sent a large water bottle plummeting from the balcony, a silent act of grim determination. A sudden thud from below shattered his focused silence, and leaning over the crib with a wide, fanged grin, he ecstatically declared that it had worked. A sinister realization struck Kim Jae-hyun as he clutched the strange, black device, a menacing smile spreading across his face as he understood he could now use it to hunt them down. That menacing smile faded in an instant, however, replaced by wide-eyed shock as a sudden sight during his workout caused him to cry out in confusion. Victorious screeches echoed from a rooftop as a swarm of goblin-like creatures celebrated over the massive, bleeding form of a beast collapsed in the foreground. Amidst the skeletal remains of a once great city, a ravenous horde of goblins descended into a frenzied rush, tearing into their grim feast with savage abandon. The moment shattered with a desperate cry from Kim Jae-hyun, his face a mask of panic and sweat as he pleaded for them not to go. Now, that same sweat of desperation poured from him as he grunted, channeling his anguish into the raw power needed to lift a heavy dumbbell overhead. Driven by sheer desperation, Kim Jae-hyun hurled a dumbbell from his balcony, praying it would hit something. His desperate act, however, was answered not with the expected thud of metal, but with a blinding flash as a brilliant white blade materialized to violently impale the creature below. A cold sweat broke across Kim Jae-hyun's brow as the world seemed to twist into a dark, swirling vortex around him, the crushing realization of just how bad the situation had become freezing the strained smile on his face. His terror found a single, absurd focus as he leaned over the balcony, realizing with dawning horror that the mysteriously glowing object on the ground below was his very last dumbbell. Trapped on his balcony, a desperate Kim Jae-hyun frantically scanned his surroundings for a heavy object, realizing with a sinking feeling that the TV and computer were too unwieldy to be thrown far enough. His frantic search was cut short by a piercing shriek from below, causing him to flinch back in alarm. The attack began with the terrifying shriek of a large, green-skinned beast, its glowing eyes fixed on an unseen foe as it pointed forward with a commanding roar. It began with a shudder that shook Kim Jae-hyun to his core, his wide, sweat-slicked face illuminated by a sliver of light in an otherwise suffocating darkness. From the darkness, a piercing shriek echoed from a horde of monstrous, green-skinned humanoids whose glowing yellow eyes burned with a mixture of agony and rage. Amidst the ruins of a desolate city, Kim Jae-hyun sprinted with desperate urgency, his bandaged arm a stark reminder of the danger as he evaded the swarm of green-skinned humanoids closing in around him. In the tense quiet of the room, Kim Jae-hyun anxiously watched from the side, trying to convince himself the situation wasn't so bad as he realized the figures he was waiting for were finally heading his way. The world returned with a single blink, and a quiet murmur of realization escaped Kim Jae-hyun as his gaze settled on something unexpected. As the dust of his recent trials began to settle, Kim Jae-hyun focused his intent on the glowing blue interface before him, commanding the system to open its shop with a swift, determined gesture. A new opportunity unfolded against a vast blue sky as Kim Jae-hyun reached towards the interface for the ultimate shut-in shop, the system prompting him to register an item with his balance of over 2 million won. With quiet determination, Kim Jae-hyun leaned forward and pressed his finger against the luminous system interface, setting a new course of action in motion by registering the item. As a holographic prompt appeared in his sparse room asking if he'd like to register an item, a determined Kim Jae-hyun immediately confirmed his choice, indicating the dumbbell he was holding. With a firm grip, Kim Jae-hyun held the glowing, grid-patterned dumbbell as a holographic system flared to life above it, initiating the registration process against the clear morning sky. Staring at the dumbbell in his hand, a blue holographic interface flickering over his concerned face, Kim Jae-hyun came to the unsettling realization that the system was pricing items based on their value from before the world ended. The world glitched with a sudden chime as a translucent blue window materialized in the sky, presenting a classic non-slip 6 pounds dumbbell and prompting for its purchase. Bathed in the glow of a holographic system, a determined Kim Jae-hyun eagerly confirmed the purchase of a classic non-slip dumbbell, the interface audibly clinking to finalize his choice. It began with a sudden flash of light, as Kim Jae-hyun stood transfixed before a mysterious hexagonal panel that had just roared to life. Stunned into silence, Kim Jae-hyun watched as a mysterious, grid-patterned monolith suddenly roared to life, unleashing a brilliant column of blue light that pierced the sky. A surge of pure, unbridled enthusiasm lit up Kim Jae-hyun's face, his eyes sparkling with determination as he pumped a fist and declared that he was ready. Tranquility of the city morning shattered as a dark, blurred object streaked from the heavens with a powerful whoosh, plummeting towards the streets below. In a violent explosion of light and gore, Kim Jae-hyun's devastating energy blade descended from above, silencing the shrieks of the green-skinned creatures it tore through. With the fall of the level 7 goblin, a cascade of blue, holographic notifications chimed into view, announcing the gain of experience points and the addition of 3,345 won to the hunter's wallet. Bathed in the cool glow of a holographic screen, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fist in triumph as a notification confirmed his wallet now held a staggering 3,342.3 E. On a blood-soaked patch of earth, the air was shattered by the agonized shrieks of goblins as one fell, grievously wounded, amidst its scattering kin. In a flash of unseen movement, a devastating force tore through the goblin horde, sending them flying amidst a violent whoosh of displaced air. In a sudden explosion of unseen power, the air tore with the shrieks of goblin-like creatures as they were sent hurtling backward amidst a shower of splintered earth. Against the vast blue sky, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fist and gritted his teeth, cursing the bitter frustration of a near miss. Instead of dwelling on his frustration, he immediately channeled it, causing several glowing, grid-patterned pillars to surge to life with a powerful hum as his hand passed over them. With a surge of raw power and focused determination, Kim Jae-hyun hurled the heavy hexagonal weight downwards, the very air seeming to strain around the forceful motion. The projectile landed with a devastating impact, caving in the monster's skull in a spray of blood as the creature cried out in agony. A wide, satisfied grin broke across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he gripped a dumbbell, pleased by the glowing blue interface that hovered just above him. A sudden chime heralded a significant change as a glowing blue system window materialized, granting him the curious title of the ultimate shut-in, and unlocking a level 1 storage subspace for his items. It was a moment of pure discovery under an open sky as Kim Jae-hyun, realizing he had gained a new storage ability, eagerly commanded it to activate. With a sudden flash of blue light, Kim Jae-hyun's training regimen began, his hand clenching a heavy dumbbell as the system's holographic interface activated before him. A sudden chime announced the appearance of a hexagonal system prompt asking if he wished to store the item, and without a moment's hesitation, Kim Jae-hyun confirmed it. Instantly, his confirmation was met with a resounding zwoom as a glowing, grid-like dumbbell materialized in his outstretched hand. As a system window materialized before him, offering to summon a classic non-slip 6 pounds dumbbell from his unique storage. A wide, hopeful smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he enthusiastically confirmed the request. In immediate response to his confirmation, a dumbbell constructed of glowing, grid-patterned energy materialized in his hand with an electronic hum. Triumphant smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he held aloft a newly summoned, glowing item, realizing with a surge of excitement that he could now call forth anything from his storage at will. The implications of this power warped his triumphant smile into a menacing grin, his eyes glowing with a cold blue light as he considered the grim new possibilities now available to him. A resonant chime shattered the quiet as Kim Jae-hyun's hand extended towards the glowing blue holographic device that had just sprung to life before him. With a whispered command to raise, a colossal spectral hand immediately manifested before him, pulsing with an intense blue energy. In a blinding torrent of ethereal light, Kim Jae-hyun poured all his focus into a repeated command, calling forth glowing blue dumbbells that materialized one by one in the air around him. The glowing dumbbells he summoned then solidified into massive, dark geometric structures, plummeting from the heavens with a deafening roar. The chaotic din of battle, a grotesque green creature shrieked as an unseen force slammed down upon it with a vicious swoosh. Amidst the sickening thwacks and splatters of the continued assault, system notifications relentlessly announced the hunting of one goblin after another, confirming a significant gain in experience points. The first sign that his life was about to change appeared as a shimmering blue system message, announcing that 54,661 had just been deposited into his wallet. A sudden notification sound echoed as a holographic interface materialized, asking if he wished to register an additional item. A dazzling, fanged smile spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he enthusiastically agreed, his excitement practically sparkling in the air around him. In the quiet of his modern apartment, Kim Jae-hyun breathed a sigh of relief as he finished reviewing his inventory on a glowing holographic interface, confirming he had everything from essential food supplies to the very dumbbells he once used to kill goblins. The mundane silence of Kim Jae-hyun's day was shattered when, with a sudden whoosh, a glowing blue hexagonal interface materialized before his bewildered eyes. In the quiet glow of a digital interface, Kim Jae-hyun sat puzzled on his sofa, suddenly questioning why he had lost a single one and speculating that it might be a maintenance cost. A heavy sense of foreboding washed over Kim Jae-hyun, a bead of sweat clinging to his temple as he reluctantly turned to face the source of his anxiety. A low hum broke the silence of the kitchen, drawing attention to a silver refrigerator as someone off-panel theorized its restored power was the source of the sudden change. Standing alone in his room, a wave of pained frustration washed over Kim Jae-hyun as he placed his hands on his hips and muttered a curse against the troublesome goblins. His mind flashed back to the brutal slaughter he'd orchestrated, dropping dumbbells from above to crush the creatures, only for the survivors to flee and relocate. Gazing out over a tranquil sky that offered no challenge, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fists in frustration, questioning if any monsters remained for him to fight. Unbeknownst to him, the answer to his challenge lay scattered on the ground far below, where the silent, gaping maw of a colossal severed head stared sightlessly from a field of shattered bones. Leaning against a railing, the young hunter Kim Jae-hyun surveyed the quiet surroundings, concluding that with no monsters in sight, he would have to find a new approach. He then raised a hand to his brow, wistfully wishing that a lost Kelican would find its way to him. In a sudden, jarring blink, the world narrowed to a single point of disbelief for Kim Jae-hyun, his eye wide with shock as a bead of sweat betrayed his mounting tension. The source of his terror then lunged forward in a blur, a single-eyed monstrosity whose gaping, tendril-filled maw opened with the sickening sound of flapping wings. As the stunning realization crashed over him, Kim Jae-hyun's mind reeled in wide-eyed disbelief at the impossible creature he was witnessing, a Kelican. Spurred by this revelation, he surged forward, convinced in a triumphant rush that the heavens had not forsaken him. The struggle began with a single, focused act of will, as a pair of hands strained against a knotted cloth, pulling with all their might on a cold, unyielding metal bar. His determined pull was met with a sudden, sharp clank as the metal frame finally shifted under the force. High atop a skeletal metal tower, Kim Jae-hyun desperately scrambled upwards as a monstrous winged creature dove towards him with a terrifying rush of air. Then, with a piercing shriek, its colossal, glowing eye fixed upon him, capturing his tiny, startled reflection within its pupil. From a high-rise balcony, Kim Jae-hyun unleashed a blinding energy blast, forcing the massive, shark-headed beast before him to turn with a guttural shriek. With a deafening shriek that ripped through the air, a monstrous, winged creature plummeted from the sky, its fangs bared as it dove directly towards a stunned Kim Jae-hyun. A bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's temple as he looked up, his face breaking into a wide, triumphant grin with the stunning realization that it had actually worked. Suddenly, a piercing caw shattered his moment of triumph, drawing his gaze upward to a monstrous, glowing creature forcing its way through the open window. With a confident smirk, Kim Jae-hyun watched the grotesque monster repeatedly slam into a shimmering hexagonal barrier, certain he only had to wait for the beast to smash its own head against the house. His heart hammered in his chest with the thrilling certainty that he would level up the moment the creature was finally dead. Kim Jae-hyun's momentary peace was shattered by the sound of flapping wings as a brilliant blue, bird-like creature burst through the window, forcing him to recoil in pure shock. His shock turned to agony as a powerful whoosh of blue energy erupted from the creature, slamming into him and sending him reeling backward. In a sudden, blinding eruption of glittering power, Kim Jae-hyun found himself straining against an immense force, his mind silently questioning the overwhelming surge. The peaceful morning on the balcony was shattered as Kim Jae-hyun uttered a single word in disbelief, watching a tremendous force suddenly rip through the serene blue sky. The wall behind Kim Jae-hyun suddenly exploded inward, a monstrous shadowy limb tearing through the rubble as he recoiled with a cry of absolute disbelief. A quiet moment shattered as Kim Jae-hyun looked up in startled apprehension, his world suddenly eclipsed by the horrifying descent of a colossal, multi-eyed monstrosity from the clouds. Against a backdrop of encroaching darkness, a single bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's face as his eyes widened in pure, unadulterated terror. The quiet expanse of the sky was suddenly broken by the sharp, guttural cry of a massive, dark-feathered bird. The attack came without warning. A great shadowy beak struck a glowing hexagonal barrier with a resounding crash, triggering a system alert that an unauthorized entity was attempting to enter. As relentless system alerts warned of an unauthorized entity attempting to enter, Kim Jae-hyun stood trapped within a hexagonal energy field that shuddered violently with each deafening impact from the outside. Flinching at the sheer force of another deafening blow, he anxiously voiced his hope that the barrier would not be breached. Knowing he had to do something, Kim Jae-hyun desperately thrust his hand forward, calling out to access the shop as a blue panel of light swished into existence before him. Gazing intently at the glowing blue interface before him, Kim Jae-hyun came to the quiet realization that his ability to collect loot was limited only to monsters in his immediate vicinity. Weight of recent failure settled heavily on Kim Jae-hyun, whose troubled expression betrayed just how disastrously the goblin hunt had gone. Amidst the desolate ruins of the city, I watched in frustration as the surviving goblins carried away their fallen, knowing that once the bodies were gone, I couldn't collect any loot. With grim determination etched on his face as he surveyed the city, Kim Jae-hyun knew his survival depended on the monsters dying close enough for him to claim their loot. Just then, a nearby barrier flashed with a digital warning as an unseen force hammered against it, and watching the unauthorized entity attempt to enter, he resolved that there must be a way to kill it. While routinely registering groceries, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes suddenly widened in shock as the staggering 2,000,001 balance on the screen triggered an abrupt and vital realization. The scene erupts in a flash of intense blue light as the protagonist, Kim Jae-hyun, thrusts his hand forward, his voice straining with a bizarre command to purchase 10 sets of cooking oil. A sudden, electronic hum filled the sun-drenched bowling alley, where Kim Jae-hyun stood mesmerized by a glowing, futuristic panel that had just activated above the pins. Spurred into action by the glowing panel, he bolted across the polished floor, his face etched with strain as he clutched a precarious armful of drinks. The quiet hum of a kitchen awakening, the day's preparations commenced with the sharp clack of a pot on the stove, followed by the smooth pour of oil and the electronic beep of a burner igniting. The quiet preparations quickly gave way to strained effort, as Kim Jae-hyun grunted against the thick, wrapping resistance of the mixture he was vigorously stirring in the pot. In a moment of intense, personal ritual, Kim Jae-hyun daubed a potent golden liquid onto his sweat-drenched torso, the substance splashing against the sash tied firmly around his waist. With his preparations complete, he turned to the more mundane task of cooking, simultaneously commanding the holographic system interface to open the shop. A glowing blue interface materialized, its prompt to register the new item already highlighting the affirmative choice. The ritual began in hushed silence, a hand steadily pouring a thick, golden substance onto a glowing cerulean platform. With the flick of a lighter, Kim Jae-hyun pierced the oppressive darkness, his determined face illuminated as he brought the flame to a makeshift torch. In a sudden, blinding flash of heat, Kim Jae-hyun could only stare in astonishment as the staff in his hands erupted into a roaring pillar of flame. From high above, the air tore apart with a thunderous boom and a rattle of feathers, revealing a colossal bird-like creature that dwarfed the lone figure of Kim Jae-hyun as he stood watch from a nearby railing. Reacting in a flash, he sprang to a nearby window and thrust his flaming staff outwards, sending a roaring wave of fire toward the monstrous bird. With eyes wide in panic and sweat dripping down his face, Kim Jae-hyun let out a desperate shout, commanding the summoning of cooking oil. With a deafening shriek, the sky tore open to reveal a glowing hexagonal rift, disgorging a monstrous entity with a gaping maw from within a cascade of golden energy. The night air tore with monstrous shrieks as Kim Jae-hyun, trapped on a high-rise balcony, desperately swung a flaming weapon against the two grotesque creatures flailing before him. In the heart of the inferno, Kim Jae-hyun's rage manifested as he swung a massive, flaming weapon overhead, roaring a furious command for his enemy to die. In the heart of a ferocious battle, Kim Jae-hyun launched himself forward, unleashing a devastating fiery strike that drew a piercing shriek from the massive, furry monster before him. The air itself seemed to ignite as a monstrous avian beast of pure fire materialized with a deafening roar, its single glowing eye promising utter destruction. In a blur of motion, Kim Jae-hyun glanced over his shoulder, a predatory smirk playing on his lips as he declared his confident acceptance. A monstrous roar tore through the air, and from his vantage point high above, Kim Jae-hyun could only watch as a cataclysmic wave of fire erupted, consuming the street in an instant. The ordeal began with a sickening snap and a heavy thud, as Kim Jae-hyun clung desperately to a metal bar, his face a mask of pure agony. From the heart of the inferno, a monstrous beast erupted, its body consumed by crackling flames as it unleashed a deafening, guttural cry. Amidst swirling shadows and roaring flames, a colossal entity slammed into the ground, its menacing growl announcing the terrifying arrival of Kim Jae-hyun's monstrous form. As fire and smoke billowed from a ravaged skyscraper, casting the shadows of unseen behemoths across its facade, a cold system notification announced that the loot from the destruction had been collected. His quiet evening was shattered by the sudden glow of a holographic screen, where Kim Jae-hyun watched in stunned disbelief as a sum approaching 10 million won materialized in his wallet. The world suddenly lurched with a deafening rumble, sending a shocked Kim Jae-hyun tumbling helplessly down the stairs with a cry of confusion. As a sudden, deep rumble shook the very air around him, a panicked Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fists and cried out, demanding to know what was happening. A deafening roar suddenly tore through the air, and in that split second, Kim Jae-hyun's world narrowed to a single point of sweat-drenched, wide-eyed terror. A hum of raw power surged through the night as Kim Jae-hyun, illuminated by his own determined energy, stood poised on the edge of a high-rise balcony. Without warning, a sharp, throbbing agony erupted within Kim Jae-hyun, forcing a pained grunt from his lips as he doubled over. In the crushing silence of an endless void, a luminous blue gate suddenly thrummed to life, cutting through the darkness with its ethereal glow. A sudden, concussive force tore through the desolate silence of a long, empty corridor. It began as a subdued family moment, the quiet gathering around a coffee table instantly shattered by a startling, thunderous roar that ripped through the room. In a moment of sheer terror, the world narrowed to a close-up of Kim Jae-hyun's sweat-soaked face as he choked out the horrifying revelation that he could see people. His terrified gaze was fixed on a family sitting peacefully in their living room, prompting a confused Park Hae-won to ask if they weren't just the neighbors from next door. World seemed to fracture as a wave of agony crashed over Kim Jae-hyun, forcing him to grip his head as one of his eyes transformed into an abyss of pure darkness, heralding an inescapable doom. His agonizing transformation immediately drew the horrified attention of the entire group, with both Choi Hyung-jun and Park Hae-won frozen in a state of deep concern. In a startling surge of power, Kim Jae-hyun's eye flared with an intense blue light, revealing to his shocked senses a world teeming with figures he could never perceive before. This sudden, overwhelming vision crashed down upon him, forcing him to his knees with a cry of sheer agony as a violent torrent of dark energy swirled into existence. The quiet moment was abruptly shattered by a sharp ding, causing a startled Kim Jae-hyun to gasp in shock, desperately wondering what he had just heard. As if answering his unspoken question, two profiles suddenly materialized with a swish, revealing a married couple in their late 30s, Choi Hyung-jun and Park Hae-won. A digital interface flickered to life with a soft swish, displaying the portraits of two young sisters, the first child, 6-year-old Naeon Choi, and the second, 4-year-old Seoyeon. It began with a single, deliberate step on the polished wooden floor, the sound echoing softly in a room filled with the quiet light of a new day. Barefoot in a sun-drenched room, a burdened Kim Jae-hyun voiced a heavy question to the floating holographic interface, asking what would happen if he chose not to grant them citizenship as the system began to search for an answer. His gaze hardened with the stark realization that denying them citizenship was a death sentence, for they would be left to face the monsters alone. The smirk of quiet authority, Kim Jae-hyun issued a decisive command, the holographic system flaring to life to confirm his order granting citizenship to all four individuals. A firm nod confirmed his satisfaction, prompting him to immediately check if he had unlocked any new skills related to granting citizenship. As the world blurred into an unfocused haze, a sudden chime announced the awakening of a new skill for the ultimate shut-in, granting him an ultimate eye that promised nothing would escape his gaze within the confines of his home base. Standing before a glowing holographic interface, Kim Jae-hyun questioned the system about citizenship-related skills, prompting the blue screen to immediately begin its search. In a flash of hexagonal blue light, a system window materialized to define his domain with a new passive skill, Declaration of Home Base, an absolute power that forbade anyone from breaching his boundaries without permission. In a sudden rush of discovery, Kim Jae-hyun's face was illuminated by a glowing blue holographic interface as he pointed forward, exclaiming that he had finally found it. A sudden chime pierced the quiet, heralding the appearance of a system window that laid bare the current state of affairs, a list of the 4 survivors, their fluctuating levels of trust, and a population dangerously close to zero. The quiet briefing was shattered by the mention of 600 people, a number so staggering that Kim Jae-hyun could only stare in wide-eyed disbelief, stammering that it was an impossibly large crowd. As if summoned by a silent command, a translucent blue interface shimmered into existence with an audible ding, laying bare every detail of Hyungjin Choi's status and abilities. Standing in his quiet living room, Kim Jae-hyun's focus narrowed on the holographic interface that had just appeared, a startling realization dawning as he processed the options for experience and loot distribution rate, a power that would let him take a share of what others earned. A wide, cunning grin stretched across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he finally understood the true method for his advancement. As a glowing blue system interface materialized before him, Kim Jae-hyun paused, his finger hovering over newly unlocked management functions while he suddenly questioned if he even possessed the authority to assign them quests. The flash of inspiration, Kim Jae-hyun's face hardened with resolve as he announced he would fill in the details himself and see if his new plan worked. Before a glowing blue quest screen, Kim Jae-hyun dismissed the basic rewards, his focus shifting to a far grimmer consideration as he decisively set the failure penalty to death. But in the next instant, his grim resolve shattered as a system notification declared the quest cancelled, leaving him trembling in utter denial. The quest cancellation notice abruptly flashed before him with a dismissive flop. Kim Jae-hyun sank to the floor, his dejected appearance a stark contrast to the cold certainty that he could kill them all whenever he wished. Surrounded by the ethereal blue glow of his power, his worried expression betrayed the heavy burden of this realization as he acknowledged that this was what he could truly accomplish with his abilities. In the suffocating silence, a bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's temple as he wrestled with the immense and daunting question of how to use what he now possessed. A look of intense concern crossed Kim Jae-hyun's face as his mind fixated on the disquieting concept of the ultimate eye. In the quiet solitude of a dim room, a shadowy energy began to swirl around the pensive Kim Jae-hyun, emanating from him as he sat before a mysterious glowing blue object. Amidst the tense quiet of the dimly lit room, a sudden hum resonated as Kim Jae-hyun cried out in shock to his huddled companions, exclaiming that he could now see them. In the heavy silence that followed their ordeal, an anxious Park Hae-won turned to her companion and asked what they were supposed to do now, but he offered no answer, his back a wall of silent contemplation. As desperation filled their cramped sanctuary, Park Hae-won gently placed a hand on Choi Hyungjun's head, insisting she had no choice but to go find water, a suggestion he met with terrified protest. In the tense quiet of their home, a worried Park Hae-won looked down, her voice tight with panic as she asked where they could possibly find more water. The weight of their dire situation pressing down on him, a distressed Kim Jae-hyun clutched his head and announced a plan to check the large convenience store nearby, hoping its size meant some supplies would still be left. The urgency of his plan became painfully apparent when one of the children broke the tense silence, whispering to their mother about being thirsty and deepening the palpable fear gripping the adults. A wave of profound distress washed over the bespectacled man, his head bowed as his hands clenched tightly on the surface before him at the agonizing thought of Seoyeon. Her anxious grip on his arm prompted him to turn, asking her to wait there and trust that he would find whatever he could. Without warning, a sharp, unseen agony shot through Park Hae-won, forcing her to wince as her face contorted in distress. As a torrent of dark energy erupted from Kim Jae-hyun, a desperate command echoed through his mind, deactivate the ultimate eye. Realizing with growing concern that the situation was far worse than he had anticipated, Kim Jae-hyun sat before a glowing holographic interface and commanded it to open the shop. A bead of sweat traced his temple as he pondered a new problem, wondering if there was a way to register more items before commanding his skill window to open. A sudden chime shattered the quiet of his confinement, materializing a system window that presented the ultimate shut-in, with 3 new life-altering options, a shop, a maintenance skill for his home, and a personal storage space. Instantly recognizing that he had been right all along, a triumphant grin spread across his face as he clenched his fist with powerful resolve. A glowing system interface presented the critical choice of upgrading the ultimate shut-in shop skill, an offer that was met with a decisive and enthusiastic confirmation. In a sudden flash of brilliant blue light, a mysterious holographic display filled with humming hexagonal patterns materialized before Kim Jae-hyun. With a series of triumphant chimes, a system notification announced that the ultimate shut-in shop had been upgraded to level 2, expanding its capacity to 20 items and applying a store-wide 10% discount. In a moment of quiet evaluation, Kim Jae-hyun brought a hand to his mouth, thoughtfully conceding that what he saw was not bad. Lost in thought against a hazy outdoor backdrop, Kim Jae-hyun stared into the distance, concluding that his best course of action was to invest in the shop and lifestyle skills to prepare for others he might encounter. The system rewarded his progress with a glowing notification, confirming that the ultimate shut-ins shop had been upgraded to level 3 and granted powerful new features. As a message detailed an astonishing new feature capable of restoring used items to their former glory, Kim Jae-hyun fell into a deep, contemplative silence, his hand resting thoughtfully by his chin. Confident smirk spread across Kim Jae-hyun's face as he savored his latest achievement, concluding that upgrading the shop to level 3 was well worth the effort before commanding it to open. In a flash of blue light, a system notification materialized with an audible whoosh, announcing a powerful upgrade to the ultimate shut-in skill and its newly unlocked level 3 shop. The soft blue light of a holographic screen illuminated Kim Jae-hyun as he reached out, confirming his purchase of drinking water and tangerines with a single, decisive tap. Tapping his chin in quiet contemplation, Kim Jae-hyun devised a plan to supply his neighbors with power and water, shrewdly realizing he could demand other valuable things in return. As his plan solidified, a system notification suddenly flashed, announcing his ultimate shut-ins lifestyle maintenance skill had been upgraded to level 2, unlocking new vassal features. A new and baffling term hung in the air, leaving Kim Jae-hyun sitting cross-legged on the floor, his troubled gaze fixed upwards as he questioned the meaning of vassal features. A sudden, quiet tapping echoed through the deserted hallway, causing Kim Jae-hyun to halt before a closed door, his knuckles white around the metal bar he held as a makeshift weapon. Kneeling protectively over her two frightened children, Park Hae-won looked up with anxious eyes, her voice a desperate plea as she addressed the man looming in the foreground. He responded by crouching down, forcing a reassuring smile as he promised his daughters he would be right back and urged them to stay safely with their mother. As their father stood resolutely at the doorway, his two young daughters looked up with wide, anxious eyes and asked if he was really going out there. Gently resting a hand on his tearful daughter's head, he promised to return with food and water and asked her to listen to her mother, but the distraught child could only begin to stammer out a protest. A terrified scream shattered the morning's quiet as Park Hae-won, her face streaked with tears, shrieked a desperate warning about the monsters waiting just outside. Her warning was answered in a terrifying instant as those very monsters lunged forward, a chaotic onslaught of glowing yellow eyes and bared, sharp fangs. The quiet moment shattered with a gasp of shared terror, as two young women stared wide-eyed while one pointed a trembling finger at an unseen horror. Frantic chase began in a desperate sprint for their lives, Park Hae-won's terrified gaze fixed on the darkness behind them as she and her companion fled. The scene suddenly erupted into violence as Choi Hyung-jun lunged forward, forcefully restraining a terrified Park Hae-won while another woman watched in helpless shock. In a blur of desperate motion, Kim Jae-hyun surged forward with a companion held tight, even as Park Hae-won stumbled behind them, the shadows of three monstrous figures stretching ominously closer. In the suffocating silence, the weight of a sudden realization pressed down on Kim Jae-hyun, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his tense temple. That suffocating silence was shattered by the children's wails, and as Park Hae-won knelt to comfort them, he pleaded for them to hush and not cry. A bead of sweat traced a path down Kim Jae-hyun's temple, his gaze falling as he grappled with the agonizing thought that this might be the last time he would ever see them. His jaw clenched tightly, the sweat glistening on his skin a stark reflection of the silent panic seizing him. The tense silence was shattered by the sudden appearance of a swinging golf club, causing Choi Hyung-jun to turn in shock as a terrified Park Hae-won instinctively clutched her frightened child in the background. His desperate work with the wires was suddenly interrupted by a frantic knocking at the door, causing the panicked Kim Jae-hyun to look up from Park Hae-won's unconscious form on the floor. Stillness was broken by a sharp rap against the door as a polite, yet unfamiliar voice called out from the other side, asking to be let in. In the tense quiet of a dimly lit room, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes widened in fear as he gripped a golf club, questioning whether the shadowy figure before him was actually a person. Fear warred with curiosity in the dimly lit hallway as a voice first warned that opening the door wasn't safe, fearing a monster, before cautiously calling out into the silence. In the tense silence, a terrified but resolute Kim Jae-hyun planted himself before a cowering family, his knuckles white around a makeshift weapon as he faced the unseen threat. Consumed by a sudden, brutal rage, Choi Hyung-jun relentlessly swung a golf club down upon the terrified and defenseless Park Hae-won. The sudden, heavy silence that followed the assault, a terrified Kim Jae-hyun cautiously peered around the corner, clutching a broomstick as he hesitantly asked if the danger was gone. In the suffocating silence, Kim Jae-hyun took a single, deliberate step forward, his anxious gaze sweeping the area as a bead of sweat traced a path down his cheek. Planting his staff with a decisive clack, he steeled his resolve, his gaze fixed on the blinding light that now consumed his vision. A moment of peace was shattered by an unseen threat, forcing Kim Jae-hyun to shield his terrified family as their desperate screams filled the air. A cry of pure anguish tore through the air as a desperate man clutched his terrified wife, begging for his family to be spared. The air crackled with tension as Kim Jae-hyun loomed over a terrified Choi Hyung-jun, his sinister smirk promising something dreadful was contained within the dark bag he held. The air crackled with sudden tension as Kim Jae-hyun shielded a frightened Park Hae-won, his voice trembling as he demanded to know who they were. The quiet morning was interrupted by a new face at the door, a nervous man holding 2 plastic bags who introduced himself as Jae-hyun Kim, the resident now living next door. The neighbor's gentle demeanor vanished as he suddenly restrained a terrified Choi Hyung-jun, calmly offering him water and tangerines with the promise they could talk afterward, a bizarre kindness that drew a choked cry of disbelief from his captive. Fragile calm shattered in an instant as Kim Jae-hyun glanced to the side, his eyes widening in alarm at the sudden and unseen disturbance. The unseen disturbance had sent Park Hae-won to the floor, where she now desperately shielded 2 terrified children in her arms. Looking down with a calculated smile despite the sweat on his brow, Kim Jae-hyun decided he couldn't refuse the offer of food and water, recognizing this man could be the very help they needed. Inside a tense, makeshift shelter, a bespectacled man named Choi Hyung-jun finally offered a cautious invitation for Kim Jae-hyun to come in, even as a wary woman in the background shielded 2 small children from the stranger. The air crackled with unspoken hostility as Kim Jae-hyun stared down a terrified Choi Hyung-jun, their unblinking gazes locked in a silent, suffocating confrontation. Amidst a curious crowd of adults and children, Kim Jae-hyun offered a wide, unsettling smile, hoping his nervous laughter hadn't frightened them. Shifting his gaze to his surroundings, he thoughtfully noted their clever use of blackout curtains to manage the glare. In the dim, uncertain light, a pensive young man named Kim Jae-hyun consumed a strange yellow item, believing it would reduce the chances of a monster attack. Surrounded by an encroaching darkness, Kim Jae-hyun sat alone at a table, a small fruit cupped in his hand, as he resolved that his first task must be to bring back the light. In a sudden blink, Kim Jae-hyun's eyes opened to reveal an intense, otherworldly blue glow. The otherworldly glow from his eyes then erupted into a flash that restored the power, prompting a shocked Choi Hyung-jun to wonder aloud how such a thing could have happened. As a flustered Kim Jae-hyun tried to manage his 2 young daughters, the calm Choi Hyung-jun extended a bottle, suggesting he give the children some water first. On what seemed like an ordinary day, 2 young girls named Nae-eon and Seoyeon were left momentarily stunned as a hand abruptly snatched a water bottle from between them. In a shared moment of desperate thirst, 2 young women tilted their heads back and drank deeply, the sound of them gulping water filling the quiet air. The tense moment was shattered by Seoyeon's sudden, violent coughing fit, causing Kim Jae-hyun to cry out in alarm and ask if she was all right. In the quiet stillness of the room, Kim Jae-hyun's pensive expression and weary gaze betrayed the heavy weight of an unspoken concern. On a sun-dappled street, a man knelt before 2 cautious young girls, breaking the quiet afternoon by holding out a bright tangerine and asking if they liked them. Across a table thick with apprehension, Choi Hyung-jun offered a single orange, a simple gesture that was met with a nervous, stuttered thank you. A tender moment unfolded as a woman reached for the orange clutched in little Seoyeon's hands, offering to peel it for the drooling child. It began as a tender gesture, a hand offering a single piece of orange with a playful request to say, ah. The afternoon began with a moment of quiet tenderness as Kim Jae-hyun gently offered a piece of fruit to a wide-eyed, trusting child. The meal began with a moment of pure culinary bliss, Kim Jae-hyun's entire being consumed by the flavor as his eyes sparkled with unrestrained delight. In a moment of quiet playfulness, a young woman with brown hair tied in buns squeezed her cheeks into an exaggerated, beaming smile. A moment filled with warmth, a woman with long brown hair smiled down at her companion, who looked up happily and confirmed she absolutely loved it. As a mother's hand extended a single, glistening orange slice to one child, the other immediately cried out, demanding her own piece with youthful impatience. Her demand quickly satisfied, the little girl beamed with joy while munching on her prize, her delight drawing a playful poke to her belly from an amused Kim Jae-hyun. A sudden chime broke the silence as the system registered an increase in trust for several citizens, culminating in the significant unlocking of Seoyeon Choi's loyalty level. With a sudden chime, a system window materialized in the air, confirming that Seoyeon Choi had fulfilled the requirements for vassal registration and displaying her status as a new subordinate. As Choi Hyung-jun waited in the background, Kim Jae-hyun murmured in contemplation, his focus drawn entirely to the glowing blue data flickering across the system interface before him. A moment of seemingly innocent cheer as Choi Hyung-jun interacted with a child, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze was fixed on a starkly different reality displayed before him, a system window showing Hyungjun's trust level was a mere 31. In the quiet of his home, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze hardened with determination as he thoughtfully touched his chin, resolving that he absolutely had to earn the man's trust. The opportunity to earn that trust presented itself immediately, with Kim Jae-hyun now sitting across from Choi Hyungjun, who nervously stammered an invitation to lunch. A bead of sweat tracing his temple, Kim Jae-hyun's heartfelt thanks faltered, his words trailing off as the immense weight of the kindness he'd received left him at a loss for how he could ever repay it. The heavy silence was suddenly broken by Choi Hyungjun's suggestion that they step outside for a private chat, to which he could only offer a nervous and hesitant agreement. In a moment of quiet intensity, Choi Hyungjun's sudden question about whether Kim Jae-hyun had accepted the citizenship shattered the stillness, leaving him utterly startled. His surprise quickly shifting to stressed confusion, he gestured toward the glowing blue notification and explained that his family had already accepted that very alert 30 minutes ago. Through the glow of a holographic interface, Choi Hyungjun asked if anything unusual had happened, prompting Kim Jae-hyun to gravely admit that they had been briefly unable to move afterward. Connecting the incident to the system, he pensively asked if people were temporarily frozen until their citizenship was granted. The air grew heavy with unspoken history as Kim Jae-hyun, his face a mask of determination, made a solemn promise to help restore the other man's old life. That determination instantly shattered, however, as the other man's response left him wide-eyed and stammering in utter disbelief. The air in the hallway grew tense as Choi Hyungjun gravely explained the one absolute rule of their new reality to Kim Jae-hyun. So long as he remained inside his home, he would be completely safe from the monsters that roamed outside. A bead of sweat trickled down Choi Hyungjun's face as he processed the absurd proposition, stammering to ask if it could actually be done. Faced with an unspoken challenge, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze hardened with resolve as he declared with unwavering certainty that he could do it. Despite his unwavering certainty, Choi Hyungjun pressed the issue with grave concern, warning him that his life might be on the line and questioning if he was truly sure. In a moment of suffocating silence, Kim Jae-hyun's world narrowed to a single, cold drop of sweat rolling down his tense face, his expression a portrait of disbelief. Driven by a desperate resolve, Kim Jae-hyun clenched his fist and swore he would do anything, confessing that he had been on the verge of searching for food and water himself. The gravity that belied his subtle smile, Kim Jae-hyun gave a slow nod, his gaze holding firm as he declared his readiness to risk his life. In the tense silence, the bespectacled Choi Hyungjun looked up in utter confusion at the unexpected and imposing figure of Kim Jae-hyun. The question hung in the air, leaving the bespectacled man to scratch his ear in anxious contemplation as he hazarded a guess that the price was likely around 500,000 won. Lost in a moment of quiet desperation, Kim Jae-hyun's thoughts were consumed by a single, crushing reality. Keeping the item in the shop was an unaffordable luxury when he needed to save every penny for an uncertain future. His somber reflection was shattered when Choi Hyungjun began flicking his forehead, abruptly dismissing his question about the golf club by insisting it was nothing important. In a moment of quiet gravity, a young man named Kim Jae-hyun broke the silence, his concerned gaze fixed on an unseen companion as he asked if they remembered the day the monsters appeared. As Kim Jae-hyun was idly recalling that it had been the weekend, his mundane thought was violently shattered by the roaring appearance of monstrous, green-skinned creatures with glowing eyes. In a moment of pensive reflection, Kim Jae-hyun looked away, conceding the severity of the past event but voicing the faint hope that those who were at home might have survived. In the heart of the goblin-infested dungeon, Kim Jae-hyun explained their individual weakness, punctuating his point with a thunderous strike that sent blood spraying through the air. Just as they were dismissed for being small and weaker than an average man, three monstrous, goblin-like creatures with glowing yellow eyes burst forth from a crimson-tinged darkness. Against the blinding glare of a sun-drenched sky, a sea of silhouetted figures raised their steel, a powerful testament to the defiant belief that humanity could do the very same. In a moment of intense strategic focus, Kim Jae-hyun's gaze sharpened as he declared that their only viable path forward was to increase their numbers. Amidst the quiet devastation, Kim Jae-hyun's voice cut through the silence with an urgent plea, asking the man before him for help in finding any other survivors.